Daniel Kelly wasn't a killer, but he was the most dangerous man London had ever faced. For nearly a decade, his crimes left no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no trace, just vanished millions and unanswered questions. While others chased power through violence, Kelly built his empire through silence, precision, and code. Behind the mask of an ordinary IT consultant lived a criminal mind so intelligent even Scotland Yard couldn't catch up. But when his perfect plan cracked, the truth behind London's most calculated criminal finally came to light, and it was darker than anyone imagined. London has always been a city of mystery, a place where crime hides in plain sight. And the most dangerous criminals are often the ones no one notices. Among the countless faces lost in the crowd, there was one man who lived in the shadows, a man who managed to outsmart the police, the banks, and even the criminal underworld itself. His name was Daniel Kelly, the Phantom of London. For nearly a decade, his crimes left investigators baffled. He didn't fit the image of a typical criminal. There were no guns, no street chases, no violence. Instead, his crimes were silent, intelligent, and perfectly executed. It began quietly, around 2012, when high-end goods started vanishing without explanation. Diamonds disappeared from secured transport vans, luxury cars went missing during customs checks, and digital transactions worth millions simply evaporated into thin air. No CCTV footage, no fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing. It was as if the crimes had been committed by a ghost. Insurance companies started to suspect internal fraud, while police reports piled up with no real evidence. The only common thread was a strange, almost invisible digital footprint, a faint trace of someone who understood technology far better than the people trying to catch him. Behind these flawless crimes was Daniel Kelly, a man who had mastered the art of invisibility. To the world, he appeared ordinary, quiet, polite, and unremarkable. He blended into the crowd like a shadow, working as an IT consultant for small businesses. No one ever guessed that behind his calm exterior, he was orchestrating one of the most sophisticated crime operations in modern British history. What made Kelly so dangerous wasn't just his intelligence, it was his patience. He never rushed, never repeated mistakes, and never took unnecessary risks. Every operation was planned months in advance, every move calculated to the smallest detail. He had a gift for exploiting weaknesses that others couldn't even see. He studied financial systems, transport networks, and communication protocols, always searching for cracks in the system. When he found one, he moved like a surgeon, precise and untraceable. His crimes were so clean that even the victims didn't realize they'd been targeted until days later. By that time, the money was already gone, rerouted through dozens of offshore accounts and cryptocurrency wallets. As his success grew, so did his reputation, but only among those who operated in the darker corners of society. They called him the man who leaves no shadow. Yet for all the talk, no one had ever seen him. Some believed Daniel Kelly was not one person, but a team. Others thought he was a myth, a digital phantom created by hackers to mislead investigators. The truth was far stranger. Kelly worked alone, trusting no one. His genius was matched only by his isolation. By the time law enforcement realized they were dealing with a single man, Daniel Kelly had already stolen millions. He didn't just evade the law, he humiliated it. And somewhere in the heart of London, as detectives scrambled for answers, Daniel Kelly sat in his dimly lit flat, quietly planning his next move. One that would soon make him the most calculated criminal the city had ever known. Daniel Kelly's crimes were unlike anything London's Metropolitan Police had ever encountered. They were too clean, too precise, too perfect. Each operation unfolded like a masterclass in planning and patience. There were no alarms triggered, no forced entries, and no digital traces left behind. What made the mystery even more disturbing was that every theft looked entirely legitimate on paper. The documents were flawless, the approvals authentic, and the people involved had no idea they were part of a carefully crafted illusion. Kelly's method was not to break the system, but to use it against itself. His early crimes involved digital thefts, but as his confidence grew, so did the scale of his operations. He hacked into logistics databases and intercepted legitimate shipments of luxury goods, rerouting them to warehouses he controlled. Everything appeared normal. Drivers had signed delivery slips, companies had confirmation emails, and bank transfers showed the right account numbers. Only when the shipments failed to arrive at their intended destinations did anyone realize something was wrong. But by then, Kelly had already erased every record linking him to the crime. His brilliance lay in his ability to merge technology with deception. He didn't just steal money, he rewrote history. He created fake courier companies, registered them under false names, and even paid taxes for them to appear legitimate. Using cloned websites and forged digital signatures, he tricked businesses into trusting him. Kelly's operations extended beyond the UK. Investigators later discovered connections to Germany, Spain, and the Netherlands, all tied together through a web of shell companies that existed only on paper. For 7 long years, Scotland Yard tried to catch him. They launched an investigation called Operation Mirage, a fitting name for a case built on illusions. Detectives, cyber experts, and financial analysts pored over hundreds of cases, but every lead dissolved into thin air. The deeper they looked, the more confusing it became. Each trail seemed to point to someone different, a false identity, a dead end, or a record that vanished overnight. Kelly manipulated evidence like an artist working on a canvas, erasing and redrawing until no one could tell what was real anymore. He used encrypted communication tools that changed every few weeks, and his data servers were spread across multiple continents. Even the most advanced tracking systems couldn't pinpoint his location. Authorities tried to follow the money, but the cash was laundered through layers of cryptocurrency wallets, online casinos, and offshore trusts. Every transfer passed through so many hands that it became impossible to trace its origin. To his victims, Daniel Kelly was a ghost. To investigators, he was an obsession. Senior officers began to believe they were dealing with an organized syndicate, a team of hackers, forgers, and insiders. But they were wrong. It was all the work of one man sitting behind a laptop in a Croydon apartment, quietly rewriting the rules of modern crime. While London streets were full of petty thieves and violent gangs, Kelly's battlefield was digital. His weapon wasn't a gun or a knife, it was his mind. And for nearly a decade, it was sharper and deadlier than any weapon the police had ever faced. Behind the mask of a faceless criminal mastermind, Daniel Kelly lived what appeared to be an ordinary life. He was 35 years old, quietly employed, and perfectly forgettable to anyone who crossed his path. To his neighbors, he was the quiet man who worked late into the night on his computer, who nodded politely in the hallway, and who rarely spoke more than a few words. He drove an old car, dressed simply, and never attracted attention. No one ever suspected that behind the locked door of his modest Croydon flat, a global network of theft, fraud, and cybercrime was being controlled by one man. Kelly's double life was a masterpiece of deception. By day, he was an IT consultant for small businesses, helping companies set up systems, troubleshoot software, and manage cybersecurity. His clients trusted him completely. They gave him access to their servers, passwords, and private data without hesitation. To them, he was the reliable, well-mannered technician who always solved their problems. But every client he worked with became part of his growing web of control. He never stole from them directly. Instead, he observed. He studied their vulnerabilities, mapped their communication patterns, and quietly collected the information he would later use to build fake companies, forge documents, and access restricted databases. Inside his flat, every wall was covered with notes, printed blueprints, and flowcharts. He had multiple computers connected to private servers, and a network of encrypted drives filled with stolen data. His setup looked more like an intelligence agency's control room than a private residence. Yet, nothing about his life appeared suspicious from the outside. His rent was paid on time, his taxes were in order, and his name never appeared on any criminal record. He was invisible, the perfect ghost. Kelly understood people just as well as he understood systems. He knew how to predict behavior, how to read weaknesses, and how to stay one step ahead of suspicion. He made donations to local charities, volunteered occasionally for community events, and even helped the local police with a minor cybersecurity campaign. His ability to present himself as helpful and trustworthy made him untouchable. The police could have passed him 100 times and never guessed who he really was. What truly set Daniel Kelly apart was his discipline. Most criminals chase money out of greed or desperation, but Kelly chased control. The thrill came from the perfection of his plans, not the profit. He treated every operation like a puzzle, each piece fitting together with mathematical precision. He waited patiently for the right moment, even if it took months or years. Once everything aligned, he would strike, leave no evidence, and return to his quiet life as if nothing had happened. By 2018, Kelly's operations were running across Europe, and he was moving millions without ever touching a single pound in cash. He had become a ghost in the system, manipulating reality with a few keystrokes. No one, not even those closest to him, suspected that the calm, polite man in Croydon was the mastermind behind some of the most sophisticated crimes in London's history. Daniel Kelly wasn't just living a double life. He was living in two worlds, and both belonged entirely to him. Every great criminal believes he can outsmart the system forever. But even the most brilliant minds make mistakes. For Daniel Kelly, that mistake came from something so small it seemed almost impossible. A single corrupted byte of data. In early 2020, during one of his routine financial transfers between two of his shell companies, a slight digital inconsistency triggered an alert in an international bank's security system. The transaction was flagged for manual review. What should have been a simple movement of money, disguised as a consulting payment, became the first loose thread in a web Kelly had spent years spinning without a flaw. The bank's cybersecurity team initially thought it was a software glitch, but when they dug deeper, they noticed something odd. The signature code on the digital certificate didn't fully match. It was as if someone had tried to replicate the bank's encryption system and almost succeeded. That almost was what changed everything. Investigators traced the signal through multiple layers of digital redirection. Each one led to a different country, a different fake identity, a different encrypted tunnel. But somewhere in that endless maze, a faint digital trail remained open, just long enough for one trace to bounce back to London. It led to a public Wi-Fi hotspot in a small Croydon internet cafe. The discovery was insignificant at first glance, just another random connection in a city full of millions. But the cyber unit decided to check CCTV footage from that day. Hours of recordings showed ordinary customers, students, freelancers, people passing time online. Then one man caught their attention. He wore a cap, his face partially hidden, and he stayed at the same corner computer for almost 2 hours. When he reached for his drink, the camera captured a faint scar running across the back of his right hand, an unusual zigzag-shaped mark that investigators hadn't seen before. They zoomed in, enhanced the footage, and noted the timestamp. That scar would later become the defining clue in one of London's most complex investigations. At the time, authorities had no idea who the man was. The connection alone wasn't enough to issue a warrant or identify a suspect. But when they cross-referenced the IP data with several previously unsolved cyber thefts, a shocking pattern emerged. The same signal, or something very close to it, appeared in multiple unsolved financial crimes, dating back several years. It was subtle, but the fingerprint of the same mind was there. For the first time, investigators realized they were dealing with a single person, not a syndicate. Meanwhile, Daniel Kelly remained completely unaware that his invisible shield had begun to crack. He continued his operations with the same confidence as before, never suspecting that a corrupted byte had turned into a trail leading straight to him. Over the next few months, forensic analysts quietly pieced together fragments of digital evidence, building a case that would soon expose the man London believed didn't exist. Kelly's empire had survived every test, except the one he never saw coming. By 2021, the faint digital trail that had once seemed meaningless had grown into something solid. Scotland Yard decided it was time to act. A specialized team of cyber investigators and surveillance experts was assembled under a new initiative called Operation Shadowline. Their mission was simple but daunting: to identify, locate and capture the ghost who had been haunting London's financial system for nearly a decade. Unlike other investigations, there were no fingerprints to dust, no witnesses to question, and no crime scenes to examine. The evidence existed entirely in the digital world, fragile, encrypted, and easily erased. Every move the police made had to be invisible, or Daniel Kelly would disappear forever. The operation began by monitoring public Wi-Fi networks across South London. Investigators set up covert tracking systems, capable of detecting encrypted data signatures similar to the one that had triggered the original alert. Weeks passed with no results. Then, in a small cafe near Croydon High Street, a familiar signal appeared again. It was faint, masked under layers of VPN routing, but the pattern was unmistakable. The same digital fingerprint left behind during previous heists. The surveillance team immediately marked the location and began recording everything. For days, agents observed customers, cross-referenced digital timestamps, and analyzed behavior. Finally, one man caught their attention: quiet, solitary, always sitting at the same corner table, typing on a slim silver laptop. The team decided not to move in. They knew Kelly was cautious. If he sensed the slightest pressure, he would vanish without a trace. Instead, they followed him discreetly, tracking his movements through traffic cameras and GPS triangulation. He led an unremarkable life, which only made him more suspicious. He went to the gym, visited a local grocery store, and took occasional walks late at night. But the surveillance team soon noticed a pattern. Every few days, Kelly would make a short trip across London to areas known for storage facilities and abandoned industrial buildings. When agents discreetly followed him one evening, they saw him enter a property registered under a company that didn't exist in government databases. The discovery opened a new door in the investigation. Detectives began tracing the company name through old financial records. What they found stunned them. The fake business had received multiple payments from entities connected to past thefts, the same shell companies that had been draining millions from corporate accounts years earlier. It was the first concrete proof that Daniel Kelly was not only still active, but expanding his operations. Further analysis revealed something even more alarming. Kelly wasn't acting alone anymore. Encrypted messages uncovered through a compromised communication server hinted at 3 other individuals: a coder, a logistics handler, and a former bank employee, each playing a specific role in his network. Yet none of them could be found. It was as if Kelly had erased them from existence. With every revelation, Operation Shadowline tightened its grip. The task force began mapping Kelly's financial empire, linking offshore accounts, shell companies, and cryptocurrency wallets. Slowly, a complete picture emerged: a hidden economy built by one man's intellect and paranoia. Detectives now knew who he was, but capturing him would require flawless timing. Daniel Kelly had built his career out of staying one step ahead of everyone. To catch him, they would have to think exactly like him, and that meant stepping into the shadows he had ruled for years. As investigators dug deeper into Daniel Kelly's world, they began uncovering secrets buried beneath layers of deception. It was a discovery that would reveal not just his genius, but the scale of his hidden empire. In early 2022, forensic analysts stumbled upon an encrypted server, cleverly disguised within the back end of a small charity website. The charity appeared legitimate, complete with public donation records, volunteer names, and social media accounts. But inside its code was something far more valuable: a secret network of digital storage used to manage Kelly's criminal operation. When investigators finally cracked the encryption, after weeks of work, they uncovered hundreds of files linking his shell companies, offshore accounts, and fake identities. Among those files was one simply named Vault. At first, detectives assumed it was another layer of digital encryption or a password-protected drive. But when they opened the file, what they saw changed the course of the investigation. Inside were blueprints, detailed architectural plans of an underground storage facility in East London. The structure was hidden beneath a disused warehouse owned by one of Kelly's fake logistics companies. The plans showed reinforced steel doors, biometric locks, and temperature-controlled chambers. It was not a normal warehouse, it was a vault built to hide something valuable, something physical. Police surveillance units began monitoring the area immediately. The warehouse appeared abandoned, boarded-up windows, rusting gates, and no visible movement. Yet late at night, security cameras captured faint activity, a delivery van entering the property, lights flickering for a few minutes, then complete darkness again. Each visit lasted less than half an hour, and the driver's identity was impossible to confirm. The plates were registered under fake companies, and the van was always changed after a few weeks. The pattern matched Kelly's cautious behavior perfectly. When detectives finally obtained a covert warrant to inspect the site, they found something extraordinary. Beneath the warehouse floor, accessed through a concealed elevator hidden under a pile of crates, was the vault described in the blueprints. Inside were shelves lined with luxury watches, gold bars, and stolen artworks. Police also found encrypted hard drives, forged passports, and untraceable mobile devices. The vault was not just a hiding place, it was the heart of Daniel Kelly's empire, a secret storage space where his entire criminal history was preserved. Investigators now had physical proof linking Kelly to years of theft and fraud. Yet, even as they closed in, Kelly seemed to know what was coming. Surveillance footage captured him near the site several times, inspecting the area as if he sensed the police closing in. He began erasing digital traces faster than ever before, shutting down servers and destroying encrypted backups. It became clear he was preparing to disappear for good. What no one realized was that Kelly's plan was already in motion. Hidden within one of the drives was a coded document outlining his final move, a complete identity change, with fake travel documents and access to offshore accounts that could fund a new life abroad. Operation Shadowline was racing against time. One mistake, one delay, and Daniel Kelly, London's most calculated criminal, would vanish without a trace, leaving behind nothing but an empty vault and a trail of unanswered questions. In June 2023, after months of watching and waiting, Operation Shadowline was ready to strike. Every piece of the puzzle had fallen into place, every detail verified through countless hours of surveillance and digital tracing. The task force had discovered that Daniel Kelly planned to leave the country within the next 48 hours under a new identity. His destination was believed to be Singapore, where one of his offshore accounts was still active. The operation had to be flawless. If Kelly even suspected he was being followed, he would vanish again, this time for good. Detectives decided to move in quietly, surrounding his hidden vault in East London before dawn. The raid began just after 4 in the morning. Dozens of officers moved through the dark industrial area, guided by silent hand signals and night vision cameras. They expected resistance or traps, but the building was eerily quiet. When the main door was breached, what they found left everyone stunned. There, in the dim light of the underground vault, stood Daniel Kelly himself, calmly packing boxes into metal crates. He didn't run, didn't fight, and didn't even seem surprised. It was as though he had been expecting them all along. On a nearby table lay his passport, a one-way flight ticket, and a laptop still logged into an encrypted account, showing transfers worth millions in cryptocurrency. As the officers secured the scene, forensic experts began cataloging everything inside. They found stolen gold bars, high-value art pieces, and digital drives containing decades of stolen data. One of the most significant discoveries was a master encryption key hidden inside a hollowed-out book found in Kelly's Croydon flat, which allowed investigators to unlock files that had been inaccessible for years. These files revealed the full extent of Kelly's empire. Fake businesses stretching across Europe, hundreds of digital identities, and financial transactions linked to some of the world's most sophisticated money laundering schemes. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Kelly remained composed. His demeanor puzzled everyone involved in the case. There was no panic, no sign of guilt. Some investigators believed he had already moved most of his fortune to an unrecoverable network of hidden accounts, ensuring that even behind bars, he would remain untouchable. Every document, every digital trace suggested that Kelly had prepared for this moment, as if he knew capture was inevitable and wanted to control how it happened. In the weeks that followed, the media exploded with coverage of the arrest. Newspapers called him London's invisible thief and the man who outsmarted the system. The more investigators uncovered, the clearer it became that Kelly's operation had been running on a scale far greater than anyone had imagined. He had manipulated global financial systems, infiltrated corporate databases, and built a criminal network without ever revealing his face. When questioned, he spoke very little. He refused to explain his methods or reveal where the missing money had gone. But one thing was undeniable. After years of eluding capture, Daniel Kelly's empire had finally collapsed. His calm surrender was not the end of his story, but the final move of a man who had spent his life playing a game no one else fully understood. Daniel Kelly's arrest sent shockwaves through the United Kingdom. For years he had existed as a rumor, a myth whispered about in financial circles and cybercrime units. Now, the man once believed to be untouchable sat in a high-security prison, his empire dismantled piece by piece. His trial became one of the most publicized in recent British history. Every detail of his crimes, from the stolen art to the manipulated bank systems, was laid out before the court. Journalists filled the courtroom, eager to see the face of the man who had humiliated banks, corporations, and investigators across Europe. Yet even as the evidence mounted, Kelly remained calm, composed, and disturbingly unbothered. Prosecutors presented a mountain of digital proof, thousands of encrypted emails, offshore transactions, and shell company registrations, all tied to his personal servers. The court heard how Kelly had built an empire not with violence or intimidation, but with intelligence and patience. Witnesses described him as polite, intelligent, and frighteningly logical. A man who never raised his voice but always got what he wanted. Investigators testified about how his encryption systems took months to crack, and how his hidden vault revealed a treasure trove of stolen wealth and secrets. Despite this, Kelly showed no emotion, not even when he was sentenced to 28 years in prison. He listened in silence, gave a faint nod, and was led away without protest. But even behind bars, Daniel Kelly's story refused to end. Within weeks of his imprisonment, investigators discovered that only half of the stolen assets had been recovered. The remaining funds, estimated to be worth over £20 million, were still missing. The encrypted cryptocurrency wallets found on his drives contained dead-end codes that led nowhere. It was as if he had locked the fortune behind a puzzle only he could solve. Authorities suspected that he had set up a system allowing him to access the funds remotely, perhaps through a hidden network that had yet to be uncovered. The thought that Kelly might still be manipulating his empire from a prison cell terrified officials. Rumors began circulating among investigators that Kelly had left behind digital traps, automated programs that would activate under certain conditions, wiping data or transferring funds without human input. Each time cyber experts tried to trace his remaining accounts, something went wrong. Servers crashed, data disappeared, and encrypted firewalls reappeared stronger than before. Some began to believe that even in captivity, Kelly was still in control, executing his plans from afar through code written years earlier. Outside the prison walls, Kelly's legend only grew. Documentaries, books, and podcasts dissected every aspect of his life, turning him into a figure of fascination. Some called him a criminal genius. Others saw him as a symbol of how vulnerable modern society had become to those who understood its systems too well. His quiet demeanor and lack of remorse gave him an air of mystery that made people question whether he was done or only waiting. To this day, investigators continue to search for the missing money and the remnants of his digital network. Some believe that Kelly built a system designed to outlive him, a machine that would continue to move money long after he was gone. Whether or not that's true remains uncertain. What is certain, however, is that Daniel Kelly changed the way crime was understood in the modern world. He proved that the most dangerous criminals no longer needed guns or violence, only a computer, a plan, and the patience to stay invisible. Even behind prison walls, his shadow lingers, a constant reminder that sometimes the smartest man in the room is also the most dangerous.